The Real Rant Reviewer Halloween Special. Yes, it's a Halloween special. Thank you guys for joining me for this Halloween special. It's 3 true scary stories. Now guys, these 3 scary true stories are from a friend of the channel that you know well, Big D. One of these stories, the first one. The second story will be from a viewer and subscriber and big supporter of the channel, Hard Target. Yes, that's story 2, a viewer story, and story 3 is from yours truly, the Real Rant Reviewer, True Scary Stories. So guys, let's get into story 1. So the first story here is called The Saver Lake Forest. Big D. It's Big D's story. I was enlisted in the British Army back in 2018. I had the weekend off and I wanted to go for a trip off the beaten track. Somewhere where no people, no problems, and no stress would follow me. How wrong I would turn out to be. On Friday, me and Lisa, names have been changed for privacy matters, started the hour-long drive to the one and only place I could think of to go off-grid for a few days, Saver Lake Forest. At the time, I did not know anything of the history of this place. We arrived at the Saver Lake Forest just after loading up on some supplies. I parked my car on the side of this dirt road leading into the forest since it is completely illegal to camp in these woods. Lisa and I began our trek deep into Saver Lake Forest. We finally stopped at a suitable isolated spot that I thought was perfect to set up camp. It was evening, but the light barely made its way through the dense trees. Lisa was quite the tomboy and was fully able to put her tent up alone. I started on dinner before it got deathly dark. After we finished eating dinner, I lit up a doobie, which was customary of me and Lisa. We giggled and attempted to freak one another out with fake noises and talking about what or who could be out there in the woods. Lisa was getting very paranoid at a point, needing me to calm her and reassure her there was nothing out there, and any sounds were just animals and the forest itself. We made love and fell quietly asleep. I was rocked awake suddenly after hearing a screeching sound which sounded like a young woman screaming. I can hear movement outside of my tent, and the voice, a man's voice. Don't fucking move. I was stunned for a moment. I grabbed my combat knife and waited to listen for any other sounds. More twigs started to snap, like someone was walking directly in front of the tent. I silently woke up Lisa and informed her that someone was outside the tent and I was gonna jump out at them. I shot my ass up and blasted out the front of the tent door with knife in hand at the ready. No one was out there. No one. Nothing. And no more sounds. Silence, with only a sense of dread overtaking me. Within 10 minutes, I packed my shit and left. The whole time having the strange sense someone or something was watching me and Lisa leave these woods. It never felt so good to see my car again. A couple of days later, I visited my mom and pops and brought up my trip to the Saver Lake Forest with Lisa and them. My mom glanced sharply at my pops and held his eyes. I said, "What? What is it?" My mom said that the 2 young women were assaulted and murdered in those woods in the year of 2011. She also said many more murders and violence has occurred in Saver Lake Forest. It was 9 years to the day of these murders when I camped overnight in Saver Lake Forest. Oh shit, so that's Big D's. Let's go to story number 2, The Forgotten Child by Hard Target. In 2006, I used to hang around a guy named Danny who lived in a house from the 1800s. It was a very old building and had been converted into 10 flats. There was large oak doors as well all around the place that you could not open. Danny lived on the top flat, and a friend of mine, Mark, lived underneath him. One night I got pissed and needed a place to crash for the night, so I asked Mark, and he said no problem. I arrived at Mark's and had a few drinks to thank him. We jammed to some music and finally went off to bed. This was a one-bedroom flat with a kitchen and a living room. That's it. On a far wall, there was Mark's TV and a fish tank with an armchair right next to it. I decided to sleep on the floor since I could better stretch my legs out than being on the sofa. I rolled over on my side where the TV and fish tank was, and that's when I noticed it. A child was underneath the fish tank, crying. Mark did not have any children. I quickly reached for my phone and turned on the flashlight to get a better view of this child. It was gone. I immediately hightailed my happy ass home. 4 years later, I got a job working in a pub. There was a man I worked with there named Andy. He said he used to work at this manor house near Talon Road for a woman who lived there. She would always complain to him about a child crying constantly and running about the house in all hours of the night. The manor house on Talon Road was where Danny and Mark lived. Andy from the pub got caught trying to murder an elderly woman by smothering just a year later. Damn. Alright, the last story, yours truly, The Nightcrawler, by the Real Rant Reviewer. Here we go. True scary story. I was living in Florida back in 2012. The house I lived in was located right next to a warehouse business. I did not live in the best of neighborhoods. At the time, it was known for being a high crime area. Didn't matter to me. I lived there in that same house for over 12 years. At this time in my life, I was going through a terrible breakup, if you want to call it that, and I was in a fragile state of mind. I was under the influence of a few general narcotics at the time. It was very late. In a hot summer. Wanted to trust me, it's Florida. The reason I mentioned the warehouse next to my house is because it was surrounded on all sides by a large chain-link fence to keep unwelcome visitors out. If I looked directly out of my window, I could see the whole fencing, but most of it was hidden from view by tall, thick shrubs. People would sometimes randomly walk by on my side of the property briefly, but most of the time never meaning no harm. By doing so, just an honest mistake. But not on this night. I love to stay up late and watch horror movies to my heart's content, and this night was no different for me, until I heard a loud commotion of shrubs cracking and swerving outside of my bedroom window. I had recently purchased an old-ass firearm from a good pal of mine in town. I never fired the weapon before and never hoped to have to. But tonight, I thought, while gripping it tightly, might be the night. That all changes. I hurried from my side patio door to try and get the surprise jump on whoever was outside of my window fucking around with me at this kind of hour, in this kind of place. As I walked stalkingly to the side of my home with pistol iron and grip, the noise started again, and I could sense it. Was someone walking in the shrubs on my side of the fencing? I had the weapon for a reason, so I did not feel any sense of threat from whatever it was making the loud noises and walking past my window while doing so. I stopped dead in my tracks and spoke out loud to whatever and whoever it was in the shrubs. Quicker than my voice began to echo through my head, the loud noises and walking stopped, dead silent. It remained still and silent the whole time. I taunted and spoke out loud to this thing, or person inside the shrubs, for at least an hour. It was extremely hot that night as well, and I told whoever or whatever was in there listening that I had a gun, and I was going to use it if they did not reveal themselves and come the fuck out right now. I quoted scripture to them like a mad priest and said I was going to shoot into the shrubs randomly until they were to shake a shrub branch loud enough for me to know I was heard and understood in all I said. Finally, after an hour of taunting and speaking fucking crazy, I ordered a shake of the shrub branches loudly 3 times, and I would leave it to my home for the night on the promise they or it would never walk through these shrubs again, period. I waited for the sound of the shaking branch. Shake, shake, shake. So I heard the shakes and went inside like I said I would. I then went to sleep. I awoke the very next day and was outside my front yard smoking the bud as I normally did. A man on a bike I never saw before in my neighborhood or in my life rode by slowly and was staring in my direction. I did not want his gaze or him coming over to me. He did come over to me. This man I never saw before came right up to my face and stopped his bike. He started talking to me about this or that, shit that didn't mean anything to me. I asked him straight away if he ever walked by this area or my home before. He said no. I said to him, "Are you sure?" He said, "Yes, I am sure." I then brought him to the side of my house, right to my window, and explained to him all I said and what happened just last night. He was not interested in it seemed, and he was expressionless throughout my thrilling tale. I walked him back to his bike in front of my home, and he got on his bike and rode off. A few days later, a squadron of police cars were stationed outside of my home and surrounding my neighbor's RV camper. The police had their guns drawn on the camper and a bullhorn telling the person inside to come out with his hands raised in the air. I walked up to a police officer who was standing right outside of my driveway and asked him what was going on. The officer informed me that I should go back inside my home until this was over, and that a dangerous criminal was tracked down and chased into the RV camper. Turns out this man had just got done robbing a gas station during his crime spree and was armed with a gun while doing so. The cops arrested the man after he came out of the RV camper and gave up. I saw his face clear and got a wave of nerves rattle my core. It was the same man on the bike, and maybe outside my window in the shrubs that night. So there you go, guys. It is 3 true scary stories. The Real Rant Reviewer Halloween special. All 3 true scary stories, guys. Can all be verified and backed up. Of course, there's mine at the end there. Is it paranormal? Of course not, but it's a story nonetheless, scary nonetheless, at least for me and everyone else. Thank you guys for listening to the Real Rant Reviewers Halloween special. Hopefully you were creeped. If not, fuck it. All right, guys. Thanks a lot for listening.